As every night, I resist sleeping tonight as well, trying to avoid meeting my nightmares. As the laughter from the television in the living room echoes against the walls of my room, I curl up in my bed like a baby in the womb, trying to lie down as if my sheets are covered in thorns. But it's no use. No matter how hard I try to silence the voice in my head, it insists on speaking. Even when I cover my ears with my hands, it doesn't help. This deep, rough voice that constantly whispers that I am dead has been growing louder, as if trying to make itself heard by everyone around me. I'm terrified to look in the mirror. I fear that the owner of the voice will emerge from within me and strangle me. I tried to tell my father about it the other day, but he didn't even lower his newspaper. It's normal. If you could get inside my head while I'm thinking about this house and your future, you'd think I belong in an asylum, he said, dismissing my words. My mother, on the other hand, only cares about my falling grades. How could she face her friends with these scores? She says I have everything I need, so what voice am I talking about? I should never mention these things to anyone, or else people would call me crazy. She warns me that there has never been madness in our family, and if I start acting like this just for attention, I would disgrace not only myself but also their honor and standing in society. She believes it's all because of the books I read. That teacher, whatever their name is responsible for filling my head with nonsense. What business do I have with classics? Are those books even meant for a 17-year-old? Why am I exhausting my brain with literature from centuries ago instead of focusing on my textbooks? What good would Russian novels do for me? When I ask my mother to listen to me, she repeats the same things over and over again, so I've stopped telling her anything. I'm afraid. More than anyone could imagine. I'm so terrified that what the voice in my head says might be true that I've started skipping meals, fearing that my mother is poisoning my food. Last Sunday, my father asked me what was wrong. When I told him I couldn't sleep and that I was scared, he lightly slapped the back of my neck. But that light slap felt as heavy as a boulder. A man isn't supposed to be afraid. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Otherwise, we'll have to switch hats, he said before leaving the breakfast table. I just watched him walk away. Now, I lie still in my bed. The curtain sways with the wind, turning into a giant ghost that enters my room. Even when I squeeze my eyes shut, it doesn't help. The ghost is right beside me, staring at me, joining forces with the voice in my head, telling me what I need to do. I pray for my mother to come into the room, but I can't even hear my own prayers anymore. Someone needs to cut my brain out and silence this voice, or else I will cut off my own head. I've started rocking back and forth. My parents keep warning me about it, but they refuse to hear my cries for help. I need to sleep. I need to sleep so deeply that I never wake up again. The horror story continues. I don't know how much time passed, but I suddenly woke up with a jolt. This was not my room. I was in a gloomy, cold, and entirely gray space. A creeping chill spread through me, making my entire body tremble. I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest, and started rocking back and forth. Where was I? Had I woken up in the middle of a nightmare? Where were my parents? Why was my fear growing stronger? No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't remember when I had put on the clothes I was wearing. I rested my head against the wall. It was as cold as the inside of me. But aside from the shaking, the trembling, and the unbearable cold, I couldn't move, as if I had been cemented to the floor. The voice in my head had gone silent for the first time in a long while. It wasn't speaking. Strangely, that made me as happy as a child. I held my head in my hands. I didn't know what I was trying to do, but it felt as though everything had finally ended. A deep desire to sleep overwhelmed me. The room contained only a chair and a table. But that didn't matter. The voice in my head had stopped. What did it matter if I just sat there and slept? I looked up at the flickering white fluorescent light on the ceiling, its buzzing sound filling the silence. When the door suddenly opened, I turned my head. A tall, well-built man walked in. Instinctively, I tried to hide from him, even though I knew it was pointless. He moved slowly and stopped right in front of me. He tilted his head slightly from side to side before kneeling down and locking eyes with me. His expression was stern, but there was kindness in his gaze. "Are you feeling better, Khan?" he asked. I was startled. I nodded. I had no recollection of losing consciousness or ending up here, but nodding seemed like the right response, as if I had no other choice. Just then, the voice in my head spoke again. Don't say a word to him. The joy I had felt moments ago vanished instantly. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping the nightmare would end. A hand touched my arm, and I flinched. The man was helping me to my feet. I obeyed him like a puppet. My limbs were numb, and my trembling had worsened. As we approached the table, he seated me in the chair and took a seat across from me. Con, do you know where you are right now? He asked. I shook my head violently, so fast that my neck hurt. Deep down, I knew where I was, but I refused to accept it. A part of me thought that if I denied it, the nightmare would end. The man placed his hands on the table and repeated the question. But I was speechless, as if I had never spoken before in my life. I lowered my head, unaware of my own actions. Then, in a weak, childlike voice that wasn't my own, I whispered, Mom. Even I was surprised by it. Then, for some reason, I found it funny and burst into laughter. The man took a step back, pulling his hands away from the table. But I kept laughing. The voice in my head laughed with me. After a brief pause, the man leaned forward over the table. Con, get a hold of yourself. A child psychologist and an officer from the juvenile unit will be here soon to take your statement. My laughter stopped immediately. I looked at him. Whatever expression I had, it made him reach out as if to stroke my hair. But I pulled my knees up onto the chair and started rocking again. Tears spilled from my eyes involuntarily. The man in a gentle voice said, Cry, don't hold it in. It will make you feel better. I didn't understand why he said that, but I continued crying and rocking. The voice in my head whispered that everything was over, that I shouldn't be afraid, that we had so much more to do together. But I was still so afraid. I covered my ears, but the voice only grew louder. I hadn't even noticed when the door opened and two people entered, a woman and a man. The woman touched my shoulder, and I nearly fell off the chair in fear. She had dark eyes and was staring at me strangely. Her voice, telling me to relax and that I had nothing to be afraid of, sounded distant, like something from a dream. Then, the first man returned with another chair. The woman sat down across from me and spoke softly. I'll ask you a few questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Her voice was calm and kind. My name is Zainab. I'm a psychologist. What's your name? I shuddered. The voice in my head warned me not to answer. But I did.